Hey there, fellow deep divers. Thanks for joining me for today's exploration. Before we get started, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're tuning in from. It's always fascinating to see our community spanning the globe. Now let's talk about something that affects us all, the psychology of spending.
It's funny. We often approach money matters with this idea that we're perfectly rational beings, carefully weighing costs and benefits. But the reality is far more interesting. Our spending habits are deeply intertwined with our emotions, our biases, and even societal pressures.
Okay, I'm already intrigued. So it's not just about crunching numbers and sticking to budgets, there's a whole psychological layer at play.
Absolutely. For instance, think about a time you bought something you didn't really need. Maybe it was an impulse purchase. Or perhaps you were feeling down and retail therapy seemed like the answer. What was going on beneath the surface?
Ooh, I'm definitely guilty of that. Sometimes a shopping spree feels like a quick fix for a bad day, but I always regret it later. So are you saying our emotions can actually hijack our spending decisions?
Precisely. And it's not just about negative emotions like stress or sadness. Positive feelings can also lead to overspending. Think about that feeling of excitement when you get a bonus, or the joy of treating yourself after a big win. Those emotions can make us a little less cautious with our wallets.
That makes so much sense. It's like our emotions create these blind spots in our financial decision-making process.
Exactly. And retailers are very aware of this. They use all sorts of clever tactics to tap into our emotions and influence our spending. Think about the music playing in stores, the strategic lighting, even the way products are displayed. It's all designed to create a specific mood and nudge us towards making a purchase.
Wow, it really is a carefully orchestrated experience. Do you have any examples of how this works in the real world?
Think about luxury brands. They often go beyond simply showcasing the functionality of their products. They weave narratives around status, exclusivity, and belonging. Owning that luxury car or designer handbag becomes a way of signaling something about yourself to the world.
It's like you're buying into a lifestyle, an image, rather than just a product.
Precisely. And this taps into a deep-seated human need for status and belonging. We are social creatures, wired to seek acceptance and recognition within our tribes. And in today's consumerist society, spending can become a powerful way to express our identity and social standing.
So even in our modern world, we're still driven by these ancient instincts. It's fascinating how these primal drives influence our seemingly rational decisions about money.
It is, and this brings us to another fascinating aspect of spending psychology: social proof. Have you ever noticed how much online reviews influence your buying decisions? Or how you're more likely to try a restaurant if it's packed with people?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a total sucker for good reviews. It's like
Uh-huh.
my brain automatically thinks, well, if hundreds of people loved it, it must be
Yeah,
good.
exactly. It's called social proof. We look to others, especially those we perceive as similar to us or as authorities, for cues on how to behave. And this applies even to our spending habits. If everyone else is buying it, it must be worth it, right?
Right. It's like our brains are wired to follow the crowd, even when it comes to our wallets.
Right.
So marketers are essentially hacking into this social instinct to drive sales.
They are. Think about those limited time offers, or only a few left messages. They create a sense of urgency and imply scarcity, making us feel like we need to act fast before we miss out. And that fear of missing out, or FOMO, can be a powerful motivator.
I've definitely fallen for that one before. It's like they're playing on our fear of being left behind.
Exactly. And this is just one example of how cognitive biases, those mental shortcuts our brains take, can influence our spending habits. Another powerful bias is the anchoring effect. Have you ever noticed how a high initial price can make a discounted price seem like an amazing deal, even if it's still more than you plan to spend?
Oh, for sure. I'm much more likely to buy something if it's marked down from a ridiculously high price. It makes me feel like I'm getting a bargain, even if the original price was completely arbitrary.
You got it. It's like that initial price sets an anchor in our minds, influencing our perception of value. Retailers use this tactic all the time.
It's incredible how easily our brains can be tricked. So if our emotions can lead us astray and these biases are lurking in the shadows, how can we possibly make rational spending decisions?
That's the million-dollar question. And luckily, there are ways to overcome these challenges. But before we dive into solutions, let's explore another fascinating aspect of spending psychology: the decoy effect. I think this one will really surprise you.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more about this decoy effect.
Imagine you're looking at subscription plans for a streaming service. They offer a basic plan for $5 a month, a premium plan for $15 a month, and then they throw in a third option, an intermediate plan for $14 a month. Which one are you most likely to choose?
Hmm. Well, that intermediate plan seems almost as good as the premium plan. But for a dollar less, I'd probably go for the premium one thinking I'm getting the best value.
Exactly. And that's the decoy effect in action. That intermediate plan isn't meant to be chosen. It's there to make the premium plan seem like a much better deal by comparison. Our brains love to compare and contrast, and this tactic plays right into that tendency.
Wow, that's so sneaky. I never would have thought of that.
It's everywhere. You'll see it in pricing for everything from coffee sizes to airline tickets to software packages. It's all about presenting choices in a way that influences our perception of value. But knowing about these tactics can help us make more conscious decisions.
That's the key takeaway here, right? Awareness is power. By understanding these psychological forces, we can start to break free from their grip and make choices that truly align with our values and financial goals.
Absolutely. And in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore some practical strategies for building better financial habits.
Sounds great. I can't wait to learn more about how we can take control of our spending and create a healthier relationship with money. Welcome back, deep divers. We're continuing our journey into the fascinating world of spending psychology. Before we went to our break, we were talking about the decoy effect, how a third option can subtly nudge us towards spending more. I have to admit, I'm starting to see these tactics everywhere now.
It's like you've unlocked a secret code. Once you start recognizing these patterns, you can't unsee them. But awareness is the first step to making more conscious choices.
So true. Now, I'm curious to explore the emotional side of spending in more depth. We touched on it earlier, but I think it deserves its own spotlight.
Absolutely. Emotional spending is a huge driver of our financial decisions. It's that urge to buy things to make ourselves feel better rather than because we truly need them. And it's often a way of coping with difficult emotions.
I think we've all been there, that retail therapy impulse when you're feeling down stressed or maybe even bored.
Exactly. And different emotions can trigger different spending patterns. For example, stress often leads to impulsive purchases. It's like our brains are seeking a quick hit of dopamine to counteract those negative feelings.
So it's like our brains are saying, hey, a little shopping spree will make everything better.
Yeah.
Even though we know deep down that's not true.
You got it. And boredom can be a powerful trigger as well. When we're feeling unfulfilled or restless, shopping can provide a temporary distraction. It's like we're trying to fill a void with material possessions.
That makes sense. I've definitely been guilty of mindlessly scrolling through online stores when I'm bored, adding things to my cart just for something to do. It's almost like a form of procrastination.
It is. And the convenience of online shopping has made it even easier to fall into this trap. You can literally shop from anywhere, anytime, with just a few clicks.
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Technology has made our lives so much easier in many ways, but it's also created new challenges when it comes to managing our impulses.
Absolutely. But technology can also be a powerful tool for building better financial habits. We'll talk more about that later. But for now, let's get back to the emotional triggers of spending. Stress and boredom are big ones, but positive emotions can also lead to overspending.
Really, I wouldn't have thought that happiness or excitement would be a problem. Isn't it natural to want to celebrate or reward ourselves when things are going well?
Of course. There's nothing wrong with treating yourself or enjoying the fruits of your labor. The key is to do it mindfully within the context of your overall financial goals.
So it's not about denying ourselves pleasure or living a life of deprivation. It's about finding a balance and making choices that align with our values.
Precisely. For instance, imagine you get a promotion at work. It's a natural impulse to want to celebrate with a new outfit, a fancy dinner, or maybe even a vacation. But before you whip out your credit card, take a moment to pause and reflect. Ask yourself, how does this purchase align with my long-term financial goals?
That's a great point. It's
Yeah.
so easy to get swept up in the excitement of the moment and forget about the bigger picture.
Exactly, and that's where mindfulness comes in. It's about developing that awareness of your emotional triggers and creating space between the impulse and the action.
So it's about learning to recognize those moments when our emotions are driving the bus and taking back control of the wheel.
You got it. And one of the most effective ways to do this is to understand your specific emotional triggers. What situations or feelings tend to lead you to overspend? Once you know your triggers, you can start to develop healthier coping mechanisms.
That makes sense. So if I know that I tend to shop when I'm feeling stressed, maybe instead of heading to the mall, I could go for a walk, call a friend, or do something else that helps me de-stress without breaking the bank.
Exactly. It's about finding alternatives that address the underlying emotion without resorting to spending as a crutch.
This is so helpful. I'm starting to see how much our emotions influence our financial decisions. But I'm also curious about the broader societal influences at play. We live in a culture that's constantly bombarding us with messages to buy, buy, buy. How do we navigate that without feeling overwhelmed or pressured to keep up with the Joneses?
That's a great question. It's true that we live in a consumerist society that often equates happiness and success with material possessions, but we have more power than we realize to challenge those messages and define success on our own terms.
I love that. So it's about reclaiming our power as consumers and making conscious choices that align with our values. But where do we even begin? How do we start to disentangle ourselves from these societal pressures?
It starts with awareness. Pay attention to the messages you're receiving from advertising, social media, and even your own social circles. Ask yourself, are these messages promoting a healthy relationship with money? Are they encouraging me to buy things I truly need and value, or are they playing on my insecurities and aspirations?
That's a powerful exercise. I'm starting to realize how much we're influenced by these messages without even realizing it. It's like they're constantly shaping our desires and telling us what we should want.
Exactly. And one of the biggest culprits is social media. It's become a breeding ground for comparison and conspicuous consumption. The idea that we need to spend money on visible goods and experiences to signal our status and worth to others.
It's like we're all caught up in this never-ending game of trying to project the perfect image, even if it means going into debt to do it.
Yeah. It's a trap. And it's important to remember that what we see on social media is often a carefully curated highlight reel. People tend to showcase their best moments, their successes, their material possessions. It's easy to fall into the comparison trap and feel like we're not measuring up.
That's so true. My social media feed is full of exotic vacations, designer clothes, and perfectly decorated homes. It's hard not to feel a little envious sometimes, even though I know it's not the whole story.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to cultivate a healthy skepticism towards social media and to curate your own feed intentionally. Follow accounts that inspire you, uplift you, and promote a positive relationship with money.
That's great advice. I'm definitely going to do some spring cleaning on my social media accounts after this conversation. It's amazing how much these external influences can shape our perceptions and behaviors without us even realizing it.
It is. And that's why awareness is so crucial. Once we start to see these patterns, we can start to challenge them. We can choose to define success and happiness on our own terms rather than letting society dictate our values.
I love that. So it's about reclaiming our power as consumers and making choices that align with our authentic selves. But it's one thing to talk about awareness and intention, and another thing to put it into practice. What are some practical steps we can take to break free from these societal pressures and develop healthier spending habits?
That's where we shift gears from understanding the problem to creating solutions. It's about building habits that support our financial well-being and align with our values. But remember, this is a journey, not a destination. It's about progress, not perfection.
I like that. It takes the pressure off and allows us to be kind to ourselves as we learn and grow. So what are some of those practical steps we can take to start building those better financial habits?
Well, one of the most powerful tools is awareness. And one really effective way to increase your awareness of your spending habits is to track your expenses.
So it's like shining a light on those often unconscious spending patterns and bringing them into our conscious awareness.
Exactly. You can do this with a simple spreadsheet, a budgeting app, or even just a pen and paper. The key is to consistently track where your money is going for at least a month or two. You might be surprised by what you discover.
I bet. I think we all have those areas where we spend a little more than we realize. So tracking our expenses helps us identify those areas and make more conscious choices.
Exactly. And once you have a clear picture of your spending patterns, you can start setting realistic financial goals. What do you want to achieve with your money? Do you want to save for a down payment on a house? Pay off debt? Invest for retirement?
Having those goals in mind can help us stay focused and motivated when we're tempted to stray from our budget.
Absolutely. It's like having a financial North Star guiding your decisions. And when you have a clear destination in mind, it's easier to resist those impulse purchases that don't align with your long-term vision.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So tracking our expenses and setting clear goals are two great starting points. What other practical tips can help us build better financial habits?
Another powerful strategy is to create a budget. Now, I know the word budget can make some people cringe, but think of it as a spending plan, a way to allocate your money in a way that aligns with your values and your goals.
So it's not about restricting ourselves or feeling deprived. It's about being intentional with our money and making sure it's working for us, not against us.
Exactly. And there are many different budgeting methods out there, so you can find one that works best for your personality and lifestyle.
I've heard of the 50-30-20 method where you allocate 50% of your income to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to savings and debt repayment.
That's a great one. And there's also the envelope system where you literally divide your cash into different envelopes for specific categories like groceries, transportation, and entertainment.
I like that idea. It's a very visual way to track your spending and avoid overspending in certain areas.
It is. And the beauty of budgeting is that it helps you prioritize your spending. You're making conscious decisions about where your money goes rather than just letting it slip through your fingers on autopilot.
I can definitely see how budgeting can create a sense of empowerment and control over our finances.
It does. And once you have a budget in place, automation can be your best friend. Set up automatic transfers to your savings account and automate your bill payments so you don't even have to think about it.
Out of sight, out of mind, right?
Exactly. And it takes the temptation out of the equation. You're less likely to spend money impulsively if it's already been allocated to your savings or essential expenses.
This is so helpful. I'm starting to feel more confident about taking control of my finances.
That's fantastic. And remember, building better financial habits is a journey. There will be bumps along the road. The key is to be patient with yourself, celebrate your successes, and learn from your mistakes.
So it's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. And it's about finding what works best for you. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to personal finance.
I appreciate that message. It can be overwhelming to hear all the different advice out there, but it's reassuring to know that it's okay to find our own path and experiment with different strategies until we find what works best for us.
Absolutely. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. There are many resources available to help you on your financial journey. There are books, podcasts, websites, and even financial advisors who can provide guidance and support.
That's great to know. I'm starting to feel more empowered and optimistic about my financial future.
That's fantastic. And remember, building a healthy relationship with money is an ongoing process. It's about making conscious choices that align with your values, your goals, and your overall well-being.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm excited to continue this conversation and explore some more specific strategies for mindful spending. But for now, we're going to take a quick break. Be sure to stick around. We'll be right back with more insights and tips to help you master the psychology of spending. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're ready to wrap up our exploration of spending psychology and equip ourselves with some practical strategies for mindful spending.
You know, we've talked about the emotional triggers, those sneaky cognitive biases, and the ever-present societal pressures. Now let's empower ourselves to make choices that align with our values and goals.
I'm ready to take notes. What are some of those simple yet powerful shifts we can make in our daily lives?
One of my favorite strategies is what I call the pause button.
Yeah.
It's so simple yet incredibly effective. Before you make any purchase, especially a non-essential one, just hit that mental pause button.
Okay, I'm visualizing that pause button right now. What happens next?
Ask yourself a few key questions. Do I truly need this, or is it just a want? Will this purchase bring me lasting joy, or is it a fleeting impulse? How does this fit into my overall budget and financial goals?
It's like taking a moment to check in with yourself and make sure you're making a conscious decision, not just reacting to a feeling or a clever marketing tactic.
Exactly. That pause allows you to separate your genuine needs and wants from those that are being fueled by external pressures or fleeting emotions. It's about becoming the CEO of your spending.
I love that analogy. Taking charge and making intentional choices.
Right. Another helpful strategy is to practice gratitude for what you already have. When we focus on the abundance in our lives, it can help to diminish those feelings of scarcity and lack that often drive overspending.
That's so true. It's easy to get caught up in wanting more, but taking time to appreciate what we already have can really shift our perspective.
Absolutely. And speaking of perspective shifts, another powerful practice is to consider the true cost of your purchases.
What do you mean by true cost?
Instead of just looking at the price tag, think about how many hours you had to work to earn that amount. Would you rather spend those precious hours on this purchase? Or would you prefer to allocate your time and energy towards something else that aligns more closely with your values and goals?
Wow, that's a really insightful way to frame it. It's like you're putting a value on your time and energy, not just your money.
Exactly. It can help you make more conscious choices about how you spend your most valuable resources.
This is so helpful. I'm starting to see how mindful spending is about so much more than just sticking to a budget. It's about aligning our spending with our values, our goals, and our overall well-being.
Precisely. And it's about finding joy and fulfillment in experiences rather than just accumulating
I
possessions.
love that. So it's not about depriving ourselves or living a life of austerity. It's about being more intentional with our spending and making choices that truly enhance our lives.
Absolutely. And remember, building better financial habits is a journey, not a destination. There will be times when you slip up, make an impulse purchase, or go over budget. And that's okay. The key is to be kind to yourself, learn from your mistakes, and keep moving forward.
So it's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. And it's about celebrating your successes along the way. Did you manage to stick to your budget this month? Did you pay off a credit card? Did you make progress towards a savings goal? Acknowledge and celebrate those wins. It will help to keep you motivated and on track.
I love that. It's so important to focus on the positive and celebrate our achievements. It makes the journey more enjoyable and sustainable.
Absolutely. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. Talk to your friends and family about your financial goals. Seek out online communities or support groups. There are many people out there who are on a similar journey, and sharing your experiences and challenges can be incredibly helpful.
That's great advice. It's so much easier to stay motivated and accountable when you have supportive community cheering you on.
Exactly. And remember, you are capable of making positive changes in your financial life. It starts with awareness, intention, and a commitment to aligning your spending with your values and your goals.
This has been such an eye-opening and empowering conversation. I'm feeling inspired to take control of my spending and create a more mindful and fulfilling relationship with money.
That's fantastic to hear. And remember, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Start small, be consistent, and celebrate your progress along the way.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insights with us today.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the psychology of spending. We hope you've learned some valuable tips and strategies to help you make more mindful choices with your money. Remember, you are in control of your financial destiny. Start today and watch your financial well-being flourish.
Until next time, happy spending.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.